Hey friends, welcome back to another video. My name's Emma Fave, and today I'm going to be painting different types of clouds with different techniques. So let's jump in and get started. Okay friends, so today I'm going to take you through different ways to paint watercolor clouds. Now, watercolor clouds can be quite tricky. It's taken me a while to kind of be okay with painting them and being satisfied with them, and there's still times where they don't always turn out. But I'm going to show you a couple different techniques that I use to create them, 3 to be exact. So today I'm painting in my Academy watercolor paper pad. It's 100% cotton. I find it's the best to work on, 100% cotton paper. I have a couple brushes with me. I have a flat wash brush so I can lay down lots of color. And then I also have my size 10 round brush for a little bit smaller details and to shape some of the clouds. And then I have my ultimate palette here. I have a bunch of different colors. Use whatever watercolors you have. That will work for you. And then you're also going to need some paper towel on the side. Okay, so I'm going to show you 3 different ways to paint clouds. Now, the first one is going to be more of a sunset and swoopy cloud. It's one of my favorite ways to create clouds. So the first thing you want to do is wet up the background. It's just going to help when you apply the color to the paper for it to blend easier for the sky color. You don't have to, but it makes it a lot easier to blend colors together. And you want it fairly wet because if it starts to dry, things are not going to work out very well. This already happened with me today. So just make sure it's nice and wet, not where it's pooling anywhere or there's puddles being created, but it has a nice, decent wet background. Then I'm going to create a sunset. So I'm going to start at the bottom with some yellow. Okay, and then I'm going to move it slowly upwards into some pink. Pink is going to be kind of like our connector color between between yellow and blue, because we're going to have a blue at the top and we don't want the blue and the yellow to mix. So pink is kind of like our connector color. So then you're going to pick your blue, start from the top, and you're going to bring it down. It's going to start to mix with that pink. Okay, but you don't want the blue to mix into the yellow necessarily. You don't want a green background sky. Now it's going to start mixing into the pink and kind of creating purple, which is what we want. And then before it kind of moves into that orange area, you're going to want to wash off your brush, dry it, and then kind of blend it just so it's not bringing the blue down too much. Okay, but the pink can come down into the yellow. And I'm just going to make the blue a bit darker at the top. You can even grab some purple if you want. Make the purple closer to the top so it's a bit darker. Okay, so here's our background. Now we're going to do a swoopy kind of cloud. So it's not like our traditional fluffy clouds. These are more of like a swoopy cloud, which I actually love doing. So you're going to take your blue or purple, and I'm going to hold my brush on an angle. And from the top corner, I'm going to lead with the belly of the brush, and we're going to kind of swoop down on an angle and then lift up. So you have this kind of tapered off look. Okay, you're just going to swoop down, and this can go into the pink and the yellow. But I'm not pressing really hard because I don't want to lift the color. I can even take some of that color off. I'm dragging it slightly across using a little bit of pressure and doing the swoopy kind of motion. Now this purple is going to mix in with the yellow and kind of create like a brownish gray, which is okay because the clouds are going to be dark into the yellow. Just a little bit. But again, I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. I don't have a lot of water. I'm just kind of dragging it slowly across. I'm going to go back up here, and I'm doing this swoopy kind of cloud. I love doing these kind of clouds. I just find it looks really pretty. I'm going to kind of just make it a little bit darker up here. You can even come down the other way like that. It just has this beautiful movement to your sky. And then what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of my pink. So I don't know if you can tell, I always dab my brush off on my paper towel to take off the excess water, so I'm not bringing more water onto my paper. That will cause the pigment to repel, and you don't want that. So I have a little bit of pink, and I'm going to do the same thing with pink. So it's a little bit warmer of a cloud, and you can even just drag across very lightly, taking off some of that pigment. Just some flatter clouds closer to the bottom. Like that. And you have this beautiful sunset sky with these swoopy, swoopy clouds, which I love, love, love. One of the easier ways I find to do clouds. I'm going to show you the fluffy clouds in a second, which I tend to have trouble with sometimes. So we're going to hope it works for this video. I'm just going to bring down a little bit more of that darkness. You can even do a little bit of the darker purpley blue clouds at the bottom if you want. Oh, that kind of looks like a bird. Maybe not. But this I find one of the easier ones for me to do. Okay, so there's our first sky with our swoopy clouds. All right, now let's do more of a traditional kind of fluffy blue sky, fluffy white cloud, okay? So I'm going to take my brush, my flat wash brush, and I'm going to go all the way across. I just had a minor panic attack that I didn't press record on my computer. I was like, did I just do all that for nothing? Okay, so I'm just going to wet it up nicely. Then you're going to pick your blue, whatever you pick. I would suggest testing out beforehand to make sure it's not like a heavy staining blue. You can even check the tubes if you have watercolor tubes that you're using to see if it's a heavy staining blue, because then it's going to be harder to lift. But I'm going to show you a little trick with that. So I'm going to be using this Phthalo Blue. Forget which. This is Michael Harding's Phthalo Blue red shade. And I'm going to place it towards the top. So it's going to be darkest towards the top of the page. And I'm going to start to bring it down. And I want my big fluffy cloud in this area. So I'm not going to put as much pigment right here. I'm going to make it darker over here just because it does stain a little bit. It doesn't lift as well as some other blues that I have, but I really like this shade. So I'm going to keep it a little bit lighter on this side. So placing the most pigment away from where the fluffy area is, but because everything is wet, it's just going to blend nicely so you won't get a harsh edge. I'm going to grab a bit more. Make it a little bit darker towards the top. And then just kind of bring it down. And we're just going to do a big fluffy cloud in this area. Okay. So I'm just bringing it over. If I want to take a little bit of that pigment off, I can just tap it on my paper towel and then drag across. Okay, now this is where your paper towel comes in handy. So make sure it's still wet. This only works if it's still wet. Just trying to evenly put this blue. Wash off my brush. Okay. Take your paper towel. I'm going to fold it in half. Then I'm going to stick my finger through here so it's kind of like a ball. Then I'm going to use this to lift a cloud shape. Okay? I'm just doing kind of one giant cloud. Like that, okay? And then I'm going to, there's a little bit of light blue still in here, but I'm going to skip some of that and leave it as shadow. So it's not completely white. Now see how up here it's not lifting as much? It's because of the color I'm using. But some other blues lift really well, so just keep that in mind. We could also add a little bit of white paint after if you want. All right, so I have a little bit of light blue there and there, and we have this nice fluffy cloud. Okay, so then we're gonna wait for it to completely dry. Okay, and then once your cloud is dry, I'm going to take my clean wet brush and some clean water, and I'm just going to apply it all over this cloud. Make sure you have clean water while you're doing this. Okay, just all over here. Then I'm going to take a little bit of like Paynes gray, and I'm just going to start to tap some shadows in my clouds. Now it's pretty dark right there. It didn't lift very well. So I might even add some white paint there. But we're going to add some shadows, and I don't have a lot of water on my brush. I don't have a lot of paint. You can even tap it on your paper towel to take off some of that. And I'm just going to kind of scrub it through just very gently to create some shadow. Now this is not as fluffy as I'd like it. That I probably should have used a different color of blue for the sky. It was too staining. But I'm going to add some white paint. Let's see if I add some white watercolor. I don't know if the watercolor will work better, or bleed proof white. And I'm just going to, while it's wet, kind of tap it there to lighten it up. There we go. Just to get a little bit of highlight. And white watercolor is not as pigmented as bleed proof white or gouache, but it can lighten up just a little bit. Okay, and this is going to fade too. So I want to make sure I have some of those shadows in there that we put. I might even do some darker shadows in a second. Wash that off, dry it on my paper towel, take out the tiniest amount of Paynes gray, or even indigo too. And I'm just going to tap a little bit more. Now I find the fluffy clouds some of the hardest to do. So if this doesn't work, that's okay. They're not always going to work. Mine do not always work, and I could still mess this up. But one of the tricks to kind of like, so if you put down, say, your Paynes gray and it does this, and you have that little kind of explosion, and you don't like the way it looks necessarily, tap around, dry off your brush a little bit, so you're taking off that pigment, and then you're just kind of manipulating the way you want it to go, so you're not getting weird marks. You can just kind of move it around to look the way you want it to. Just tap it on your paper towel just so you can take off some of that excess pigment. All right, now that white watercolor is starting to fade a little bit more, so I might even grab my Dr. Paige Martin's Bleed Proof White a little bit, just a little bit, and just kind of tap some of those wet areas just a little bit so there's a bit more of a highlight. You don't want a ton of white, but you do want some of those nice little highlights. Especially towards the edges, I find. Just going right, kind of straight from the jar. And I'm going right next to where there's that shadow. Okay, and I'm trying also not to overdo it. I feel like there needs a little bit more dimension in here. Maybe a little bit more blue in some areas. A little bit more shadow. And knowing when to stop is one of the trickier parts, right? And I can't tell you when that is. Sometimes you gotta mess up and go, oh, I should have stopped there. And sometimes you can just keep going. Okay, so there's kind of like our fluffy white cloud. I might do a little bit more after. I don't know. Like, do we want some more depth in here? I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna leave it and then we might come back to that. But that's kind of the gist on how I do my fluffier clouds. I don't like that spot there. That's okay. Okay, so we're going to leave that one. Now we're going to do some fluffy clouds, but also in like a sunset setting. So same kind of background as this one. So let's do the same thing that we did before. Let's wet it all up. Oops, there's a little bit of pigment in here. That's okay. Wet up the background. It can be slightly blue. That's fine. Okay, make sure it's nice and wet. I'm going to start with my yellow again at the bottom. Then I'm going to move into my pink. There's a little bit of blue in this background. It's okay. Move into my pink, and it's going to mix in with my yellow a bit to create that orange color. And then our blue. Can be a bit darker. We can get a little bit of purple in there. And this time, instead of the swoopy clouds, we're going to be doing kind of like a fluffy cloud, like there, but not white. Okay, so the other way that you can lift without a paper towel is with your brush. So I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. What you're going to do is you're going to take your clean brush, make sure you have clean water, dab it on your paper towel so it's damp, but it's dryish. And what you're going to do is you're going to just kind of run it against your paper like that, and you're going to lift the color with your brush, and then I just dab it on my paper towel to take off that pigment. Okay, make sure you dab it on your paper towel, or you're just going to be moving the pigment everywhere. So this is another way to lift. Then you can wash off your brush again, dab it on your paper towel, make sure it's dryish, because if you have water on your brush, it's going to repel, like, oh, actually, you know what? Let me see if I can show you, because it can be another way to do clouds. So if I have a wet brush with a little bit of water on it and I tap here, look at that. It's pushing away the pigment, which you can use to create clouds. The only thing with that is that, see the outline? Here you get a darker outline around there, which is fine. You just won't get that soft outline like you do on this side. That's the only difference. So I don't like doing it that way necessarily. I'm just going to try and blend this out a bit. Okay, so I kind of like this method better. So that's also why you want to make sure that you're drying your brush off before you're moving that pigment. Let's try and do some on this side. So I'm doing a light cloud before we add some of our darker, puffier clouds. But I just wanted to show you this way of how to lift. Now this is all dry. I don't know why my paper's drying like crazy today. I'm just gonna re-wet it. Okay, it's lifting here a bit. I gotta go back over it because it's all drying now. Okay, hold on. Okay, we're back. This is also the trouble with talking while painting. I go slower and then things dry really fast. So, lifting color with our brush, like so, is one way to do it. Just keep dabbing it like that. Okay. And then we're going to do the fluffy clouds, but darker clouds. So this is the other way. So I'm going to grab some, is that blue? That's purple. There we go. Some purple. And I'm just going to create some fluffy clouds. Because of the sunset, it would be darker. I'm really hoping this turns out. Okay. And I'm just kind of going around in circles. I'm just going to cover where I did. Why is that drying so fast? I'm just going to cover where I lifted. I wanted to show you that you could also lift with your brush instead of a paper towel. But we're going to do some darker clouds here. So I have my purple. And I'm just tapping with my brush to get these clouds. Okay, just kind of moving around in a circular motion. Like this. Might even want like a little bit of yellow in there just to have it a bit more of like a muted purple, like a grayish kind of purple. Looks a little bit more realistic. Okay, because of the sunset, the clouds would be darker. And I'm just manipulating the shape by kind of doing these little circles. Okay. And if you feel like you're tapping like this and it's doing that weird kind of spider vein kind of shape and you don't like that, tap your brush on your paper towel, take off some of the water and the paint, and then go back in and work on the shape that you want. Okay. And then as the clouds get lower and closer to the horizon, they're going to start being lighter. So you can even grab some pink, some orange. Okay, so this is different than our swoopy clouds. We're just doing these little circular motions. Adding some different purples in there just to make it darker. And then I might even add some orange, a little bit of orange at the tail ends of some of these clouds. So it looks like the sun is kind of is like shining on some of the cloud and it's giving us that glow. So just like the tips of some of these purple clouds. And then maybe a bit more down here, you'll have some of the, oops, too much. Let's move it around. Some of the actual orange clouds. Remember how I said sometimes my paintings of clouds work and sometimes they don't? This is this is one of those examples. It's fine. A little bit of orange. I'm gonna grab a little bit more of our muted kind of purple. So I'm just mixing a little bit of purple with yellow. I'm going to make it darker in some areas. You can even grab a bit of blue. Just remember your clouds are going to be a bit darker and fluffier towards the top of your painting, and then flatter and lighter towards the horizon. You can even do a little bit more darkness there. But it is tricky because you do have to work quite fast at times. Now, if you want to lift, like we were doing before, you can add a little bit of lightness by lifting with your damp, clean brush. There's just so many things you can do, and just keep trying different things. Maybe lighten up some of the darkness in the purple. And I'm just kind of pushing some of that pigment. Like that. And that's kind of it. So that's our little cloud tutorial. You just keep playing as you like. I want to make this a little bit darker in some areas. Hold on. Again, I'm just going to tap it on my paper towel. I'm just going to try and, you can even grab a little bit of like Paynes gray if you wanted to make it a little bit darker. You know how there's some darker bits, some of the clouds. You just also got to make sure it's still wet. If it's not wet still, then stop. And then you could always re-wet the area when it's so evenly when it's fully dry. But these clouds are still wet, so that's why I keep going. But the minute they start to dry, stop. Because you're going to start getting some funky marks and all that. Like I'm starting to now. Okay, I gotta stop. But yeah, that's kind of it. again, if you want to go back into, you know, some of these clouds, and grab a little bit more white and just do a little bit of fluffiness. You could always just keep going with some of these. Just gonna blend a little bit more. But yeah, just keep practicing, trying different things. Honestly, clouds take time and lots of practice. And this is still something I'm practicing because I don't feel completely confident, but I wanted to show you some of the techniques that I use to achieve clouds when I do attempt them in my paintings. So that's it. I hope you guys found it informative and helpful at all. I don't know if you did, but either way, I had fun doing it. So much fun to do. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will see you guys in our next video. Thank you all so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on all my other platforms for tons more content. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.